The challenge begins. The dropship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Nexus 9, a moon notorious for its hostile environment. Inside, Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Forces checked her gear one last time, her movements calm and practiced. Around her, her team of 5 other humans sat in various states of relaxation, some joking quietly, others lost in thought. Across the bay, separated by a shimmering energy field, sat their opponents, or rather, their fellow participants in this interstellar military exercise. The Zarkoni, a species renowned throughout the galaxy for their survival skills, looked anything but relaxed. Their scaled skin rippled with tension, 4-fingered hands clenching and unclenching around their equipment. 2 minutes to drop. The AI's voice echoed through the ship. Captain Chen stood, her magnetic boots keeping her steady as the ship bucked. All right, team. You know the drill. This is a survival exercise, not a picnic. But remember, we're here to learn and to teach. Let's show the Zarkoni what Terrans are made of. A chorus of hoorah answered her, drawing curious looks from the Zarkoni. On the other side of the barrier, Commander Zexlor of the Zarkoni Expeditionary Force addressed his own team. Remember your training. This moon is classified as a death world. Every step could be your last. Stay alert. Stay alive. The dropship's bay doors opened, revealing a landscape that seemed designed to kill. Jagged rocks jutted from pools of bubbling acid. The sky boiled with storm clouds, flashes of lightning illuminating the barren wasteland. In the distance, a range of active volcanoes spewed ash and lava into the air. Without hesitation, the human team leaped from the ship, their grav chutes flaring to life. The Zarkoni followed a moment later, their own descent more measured and cautious. As soon as her boots touched the ground, Captain Chen was moving. Spread out. Secure the perimeter. Rodriguez, set up the Atmo scrubbers. Park, start terrain analysis. The Zarkoni landed in a tight formation, immediately setting up a defensive posture. Commander Zexlor's eyes darted from one danger to another, his training screaming at him that they were exposed, vulnerable. Humans, he called out, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into Terran standard. We should seek shelter immediately. This area is too exposed. Captain Chen turned to him, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Exposed to what, Commander? The acid rain won't start for another hour, according to our readings. We've got time to set up properly. Zexlor's jaw dropped, an expression of shock shared across species. But the volcanic activity, the unstable ground, the toxic atmosphere, all factored in, Chen replied, her tone almost cheerful. Listen, Commander, I know you guys are the survival experts, but trust me, we got this under control. In fact, she paused, cocking her head to one side. Rodriguez Park, how about we invite our Zarkoni friends to dinner once we're set up? Might as well start this exercise on the right foot. The casual way the humans discussed having a meal in this hellscape environment sent ripples of unease through the Zarkoni team. Yet, as they watched the humans efficiently set up their base camp, deploy protective fields, and even start preparing food, a new emotion began to creep in, curiosity. As the hour passed, the promised acid rain began to fall. The humans, having finished their setup, retreated under their protective dome. To the Zarkoni's surprise, they found themselves invited in as well. I don't understand, Zexlor said as he cautiously accepted a plate of what the humans called chili. Your species comes from a Class 10 death world. How can you be so relaxed in an environment like this? Captain Chen laughed. Commander, compared to some of the training exercises we run back home, this is practically a vacation spot. Sure, it's dangerous, but danger is relative. We're prepared. We're alert, but we're not going to let a little acid rain and some volcanoes stop us from enjoying ourselves. As if to punctuate her point, a tremor shook the ground. While the Zarkoni tensed, ready to flee, the humans barely seemed to notice. One of them, A burly man named Kowalski even made a joke about it, spicing up the chili. Zexlor watched in amazement as the humans continued their meal, discussing strategies for the coming days of the exercise as casually as if they were planning a hike. He realized that this experience was going to be far different and far more enlightening than he had ever imagined. As the first day on Nexus 9 drew to a close, both teams prepared for the long night ahead. The humans set up watch rotations, but also organized what they called a movie night in their dome. The Zarkoni, still struggling to understand their opponent's seemingly paradoxical approach to survival, set up their own camp nearby, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Little did either team know that the real challenges of Nexus 9 were yet to come, and that their contrasting approaches to survival would be tested in ways none of them could have predicted. As the planet's 3 moons rose in the turbulent sky, casting an eerie glow over the landscape, both humans and Zarkoni settled in for a night that promised to be anything but restful. Unexpected tactics. The second day on Nexus 9 dawned with a sky that looked more like a bruise than a sunrise. Captain Chen emerged from the protective dome, stretching as if she'd just woken up at a luxury resort rather than on a death world. "All right, team, rise and shine," she called out cheerfully. "We've got a big day ahead of us. Today's challenge: reach the extraction point 50 kilometers north, through the acid flats and past the Shatterstone Mountains." Commander Zexlor, who hadn't slept a wink, stared at her in disbelief. "Captain, surely you jest. The acid flats are impassable. And the Shatterstone Mountains. They're called that because the stone literally shatters under your feet." Chen grinned, a twinkle in her eye. "Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Come on, Commander. Where's your sense of adventure?" As both teams packed up their camps, the differences in their approaches became even more apparent. The Zarkoni meticulously checked and double-checked every piece of equipment, their movements careful and deliberate. The humans, on the other hand, seemed almost haphazard in their preparations, joking and chatting as they worked. "Hey, Kowalski," Rodriguez called out. "Bet you a week's rations I can make it to the acid flats before you." Kowalski laughed. "You're on, buddy. Loser has to eat the emergency ration bars for a month." Zexlor watched this exchange with a mixture of horror and fascination. "Do they not understand the gravity of our situation?" he muttered to his second-in-command, Vexna. Vexna shook her head. "I'm beginning to think they understand it all too well, sir. They just don't seem to care." As they set out, the terrain immediately lived up to its reputation. The ground was unstable, with patches that looked solid suddenly giving way to reveal bubbling pools of acid beneath. The air was thick with toxic fumes, visibility reduced to mere meters. The Zarkoni moved with extreme caution, testing each step before committing their weight. Progress was slow, but steady. They were shocked to see the humans practically bounding ahead, using what looked like long poles to vault over suspicious patches of ground. "What are they doing?" Zexlor asked, incredulous. "They're going to get themselves killed." But as the hours wore on, it became clear that the human strategy, while seemingly reckless, was actually quite effective. They covered ground much faster than the Zarkoni, and their apparently carefree attitude allowed them to adapt quickly to changing conditions. When they reached the edge of the acid flats, both teams paused to reassess. The flats stretched out before them, a vast expanse of steaming, bubbling death. The Zarkoni began to set up complex filtration systems and protective gear. Captain Chen watched them for a moment, then turned to her team. "All right, folks. Time for some improvised chemistry. Park, you're up." Park, the team's scientist, grinned and pulled out what looked like ordinary rocks from her pack. "I collected these from our campsite last night," she explained to the bewildered Zarkoni. "They're rich in a compound that, when combined with the acid, creates a temporary neutralizing effect. Watch and learn." With that, she tossed one of the rocks into the acid. Where it landed, the bubbling ceased, and a solid crust began to form. The humans whooped with joy and started making their way across the flats, tossing rocks ahead of them to create a safe path. Zexlor was stunned. How? How did you know that would work? Chen shrugged. We didn't, not for sure. But Park had a theory, and in situations like this, sometimes you have to take calculated risks. The Zarkoni, after some hesitation, followed the humans' path across the acid flats. They reached the other side in a fraction of the time they had anticipated. As they approached the Shatterstone Mountains, the true nature of the challenge became apparent. The entire range seemed to be in constant motion, rocks crumbling and reforming in an endless cycle. Any attempt to climb would be suicidal. The Zarkoni began to discuss complex plans involving scaling equipment and force fields. They were interrupted by a whoop of joy from Kowalski. "Check this out," he yelled, pointing to a particularly unstable section of the mountain. As they watched, a geyser of superheated steam burst from the ground, sending rocks flying high into the air. "Oh, hell yeah," Rodriguez grinned. "Who's up for a little extreme surfing?" Before the Zarkoni could process what was happening, the humans had fashioned crude sleds from their equipment. They waited for the next steam eruption, then used the force of it to propel themselves high into the air, landing on the other side of the mountain range. Zexlor watched, his mouth agape, as the last of the humans disappeared over the peak. "They're insane," he muttered. "Absolutely insane." Vexena, however, was watching with a different expression, one of dawning understanding. "No, sir," she said slowly. "I don't think they're insane at all. I think they might be geniuses." As the Zarkoni began the laborious process of navigating the treacherous mountain pass, they could hear the distant sounds of human laughter and celebration. Somehow, against all logic, the Deathworlders were not just surviving. They were thriving. Little did either team know that their greatest challenge was yet to come. As they made camp that night, the ground beneath them began to rumble ominously. The true test of survival was about to begin, and it would require more than just physical endurance or clever tricks. It would demand a fundamental shift in how both species viewed the concept of danger itself. The tables turned. The ground's trembling grew more intense as night fell on Nexus 9. What had started as a slight vibration was now a full-blown seismic event. Captain Chen, who had been dozing lightly, snapped awake instantly. "Everyone up," she shouted, her voice cutting through the rumbling. "We've got a situation." The human team was on their feet in seconds, grabbing essential gear with practiced efficiency. Across the camp, the Zarkoni were also stirring, their movements panicked and disorganized. Commander Zexlor's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain Chen, our sensors indicate a massive tectonic shift. This entire region is becoming unstable." Chen nodded grimly. "Confirmed, Commander. We need to move now. There's a plateau about 5 kilometers east that should provide some stability." As if to punctuate her words, a fissure opened up in the ground between the two camps, spewing noxious gases and molten rock. The Zarkoni froze, their survival instincts screaming at them to stay put, to not risk movement in such chaotic conditions. Chen saw their hesitation and made a split-second decision. "Rodriguez, Park, help the Zarkoni. Kowalski, you're with me. We'll scout ahead." Without waiting for acknowledgement, Chen and Kowalski took off, navigating the increasingly treacherous terrain with an almost preternatural agility. The Zarkoni watched in awe as the two humans leaped over crevices and ducked under flying debris, moving as if they'd trained for this exact scenario their entire lives. Rodriguez approached Zexlor, extending a hand. "Come on, Commander. We got to move." Zexlor hesitated for a moment, then took the offered hand. "How can you be so calm?" he asked as they began to run, dodging falling rocks and spurts of lava. Rodriguez grinned, though there was a steel in his eyes that belied his casual demeanor. This is just Tuesday for us, Commander. Now, less talking, more running." As they made their way towards the plateau, the true extent of the disaster became apparent. The entire landscape was shifting, mountains crumbling and new ones forming in their place. The air was thick with ash and toxic fumes, visibility dropping to near zero. Park, who was helping an injured Zarkoni soldier, suddenly called out, "Captain, I'm picking up some strange readings. There's a massive energy surge building up about 2 kilometers north of us." Chen's voice crackled over the comms. "Confirmed, Park. We got eyes on it. It looks like some kind of geothermal geyser, and it's about to blow." Zexlor's eyes widened in horror. A geothermal eruption of that magnitude could vaporize everything within a 10-kilometer radius. "We need to retreat, find shelter." But Chen's next words shocked everyone. "Negative, Commander. We're going towards it." "You can't be serious," Zexlor exclaimed. "That's certain death." "Trust me, Commander," Chen replied, her voice calm but firm. "We've got a plan, but we're going to need your help to pull it off." As they approached the site of the impending eruption, Chen and Kowalski came into view. They were setting up what looked like a makeshift rig around the pulsing, glowing ground. "All right, listen up," Chen said as the others arrived. "This eruption is going to happen whether we like it or not. But if we can channel it, control it, we can use its force to propel us to safety." She quickly outlined her plan. Using materials from both teams' equipment, they would construct a crude but effective heat shield and propulsion system. When the geyser erupted, instead of being destroyed by it, they would ride it to the plateau. The Zarkoni were stunned. It was insane, suicidal even. But as they looked at the determination on the humans' faces, they realized something crucial. These Deathworlders weren't ignoring the danger. They were respect it, understand it, and finding a way to work with it rather than against it. With time running out, both teams threw themselves into the work. The Zarkoni's meticulous knowledge of materials and structural integrity perfectly complemented the humans' innovative thinking and adaptability. As the ground beneath them began to glow red-hot, Chen called out, "It's now or never. Folks, everybody in." They piled into the makeshift craft, humans and Zarkoni pressed together, all differences forgotten in the face of imminent danger. There was a moment of terrifying silence, then a roar that seemed to shake the very fabric of reality. The geyser erupted, a column of superheated steam and rock that shot miles into the sky. But instead of destroying them, it caught their craft, propelling it upwards and forwards with unimaginable force. For a few heart-stopping moments, they were airborne, the craft groaning and shaking around them. Then, with a bone-jarring thud, they landed on the plateau, safely away from the devastation below. As they emerged from the craft, humans and Zarkoni alike were wide-eyed and shaky. But there was something else too, a newfound respect, a shared understanding. Zexlor approached Chen, his expression a mix of awe and confusion. I don't understand. How could you have known that would work?" Chen smiled, but there was a weariness in her eyes that spoke of the strain she'd been under. "We didn't know, Commander, not for sure. But we knew that doing nothing wasn't an option. Sometimes survival isn't about avoiding danger. It's about facing it head-on and finding opportunity in chaos." As they looked out over the transformed landscape of Nexus 9, both teams knew that something fundamental had changed. The lines between teacher and student, between survival expert and reckless thrill-seeker, had blurred. But their ordeal was far from over. The cataclysm had altered more than just the terrain. It had changed the very nature of their challenge. As night fell on the plateau, bringing with it new and unforeseen dangers, both humans and Zarkoni prepared to face whatever came next, together. Lessons learned. The first rays of Nexus 9's alien sun broke over the horizon, illuminating a landscape transformed beyond recognition. The plateau where the combined human and Zarkoni teams had taken refuge now stood as an island in a sea of molten rock and twisted terrain. Captain Chen surveyed the scene, her expression grim but determined. "Well, folks, Looks like we got our work cut out for us. The extraction point is now on the other side of that lava field. Commander Zexlor joined her, his scales shimmering with a mix of anxiety and newfound respect. Captain, I must admit, your methods are unorthodox, but effective. Perhaps it's time we learned from each other. Chen smiled, a glint of approval in her eyes. Couldn't agree more, Commander. Let's pool our resources and see what we can come up with. As the two teams gathered to strategize, it became clear that the humans' seemingly reckless approach and the Zarkoni's careful planning could complement each other perfectly. Park, the human scientist, was deep in discussion with Vexna, the Zarkoni second-in-command. If we combine your heat-resistant alloys with our propulsion technology, Park mused, we might be able to create a vehicle capable of traversing the lava field. Vexna nodded enthusiastically, her initial skepticism replaced by genuine interest. And if we incorporate our radiation shielding, we could protect ourselves from the intense heat. It's actually quite exciting to think about. Nearby, Kowalski was teaching a group of Zarkoni soldiers some basic parkour techniques. It's all about momentum and body control, he explained, demonstrating a role that allowed him to absorb the impact of a fall. You've got to work with the environment, not against it. The Zarkoni, initially clumsy and hesitant, began to pick up the techniques with surprising speed. Their natural agility, honed by years of cautious movement, adapted well to this new, more dynamic approach. As the day progressed, the fusion of human and Zarkoni methods began to take shape. They constructed a series of lava-proof sleds, combining Zarkoni material science with human design flair. The propulsion system, a joint effort between Rodriguez and a Zarkoni engineer named Kexty, was a marvel of improvised engineering. It's not pretty, Rodriguez grinned, patting the makeshift engine, but it'll get us where we need to go. Kexty chittered in agreement, her earlier fear of the humans' methods replaced by an almost childlike enthusiasm. I never imagined engineering could be so creative. On our world, we follow strict protocols. This is liberating. As they prepared to launch their daring crossing of the lava field, Chen gathered both teams for a final briefing. Listen up, everyone. What we're about to do is dangerous. There's no denying that. But we've prepared as best we can, and we'll face whatever comes together. Zexlor stepped forward, surprising everyone. If I may, Captain. At Chen's nod, he turned to address the group. My fellow Zarkoni, I know this approach seems to go against everything we've been taught, but I've come to realize something important. True survival isn't just about avoiding danger. It's about adapting to it, even embracing it when necessary. A murmur of agreement ran through both teams. The Zarkoni, once so rigid in their methods, now stood ready to take a leap into the unknown alongside their human counterparts. As they boarded their makeshift vehicles, a new sense of unity pervaded the group. Humans and Zarkoni worked side by side, each bringing their unique strengths to the task at hand. The journey across the lava field was a harrowing experience. The heat was intense, the terrain treacherous. But where once the Zarkoni would have frozen in fear, they now moved with a newfound confidence, inspired by the humans' unwavering determination. At one point, a geyser of lava erupted directly in their path. Without missing a beat, Kowalski shouted, "Ramp it!" The Zarkoni driver, instead of panicking, gunned the engine, using the suddenly formed obsidian as a natural ramp to jump the fiery obstacle. As they cleared the lava field and approached the extraction point, both teams were exhausted but exhilarated. They had faced seemingly insurmountable odds and emerged victorious, not just surviving but thriving in the face of extreme danger. Chen and Zexlor stood side by side as the extraction ships appeared on the horizon. "You know, Commander," Chen said with a smile, "I think we've all learned something valuable here. Your caution and planning, combined with our adaptability and risk-taking, it's a powerful combination." Zexlor nodded, his eyes reflecting a new understanding. Indeed, Captain. I believe both our species have much to gain from this exchange. The galaxy is a dangerous place, but perhaps with this new perspective, we can face its challenges together. As the ships landed and the teams prepared to depart Nexus 9, there was a sense that this was more than just the end of a training exercise. It was the beginning of a new era of cooperation and mutual understanding between humans and Zarkoni. But even as they celebrated their success, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. The final test of their newfound alliance was yet to come, and it would push both species to their absolute limits. The true measure of their growth would be tested in the crucible of one last, ultimate trial. The final test. As the extraction ships ascended from the turbulent surface of Nexus 9, an unexpected message crackled through the communication systems. The stern voice of Fleet Admiral Zixer, the overseer of the joint training exercise, filled the cabin. Attention, human and Zarkoni teams. Your final test begins now. You are to immediately report to the Omega Station orbiting Nexus 9. There, you will face a challenge that will determine the true success of this exercise. Prepare yourselves. Captain Chen and Commander Zexlor exchanged glances. The weariness in their eyes was quickly replaced by a spark of determination. Well, folks, Chen addressed the combined team. Looks like our vacation isn't over yet. Zexlor chittered in what could only be described as a laugh. A vacation, Captain. Is that what you call this? The journey to Omega Station was brief, but tense. As they docked, both teams were acutely aware that whatever lay ahead would be the true measure of their newfound alliance. Omega Station was a massive structure, a testament to the advanced technology of both species. As they entered the main chamber, they were greeted by the imposing figure of Admiral Zixer, his multiple eyes scrutinizing each of them. You have all performed. Unexpectedly, Zixer began, his tone neutral. But the true test of your capabilities lies ahead. Omega Station is more than just an observation post. It is the control center for a planetary defense system capable of protecting an entire sector from cosmic threats. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a massive asteroid field approaching Nexus 9's star system. Your final challenge is this, Zixer continued. You must work together to calibrate and operate the defense system to protect not just Nexus 9, but 3 inhabited planets in neighboring systems. You have 6 hours before the asteroid field enters the danger zone. Failure is not an option. As Zexer left, the gravity of the situation settled over the team. This wasn't just a test anymore. Real lives were at stake. Chen turned to her team, her expression serious but confident. All right, people. This is what we've been preparing for. Let's show them what humans and Zarkoni can do together. Zexlor nodded in agreement. Indeed. Let us combine our strengths and face this challenge as one. They quickly divided into teams, each focusing on a different aspect of the monumental task ahead. Park and Vexna tackled the complex calculations needed to predict the asteroid's trajectories. Kowalski and a Zarkoni named Tixlor worked on optimizing the station's power systems. Rodriguez and Kexty focused on fine-tuning the targeting systems. As the hours ticked by, the team faced one crisis after another. Power fluctuations threatened to destabilize the entire system. Unexpected solar flares interfered with their calculations. At one point, a critical component of the targeting array failed completely. But where once these challenges might have caused panic and division, the newly forged team met each obstacle with determined creativity. When the targeting array failed, Kowalski suggested a daring plan to reroute power from life support systems temporarily. The Zarkoni, once adverse to such risks, now saw the logic in his audacious thinking. It's crazy, Tixlor admitted, but it just might work. Let's do it. With just minutes to spare, the combined team managed to bring the defense system online. Chen and Zexlor stood side by side at the main control panel, their hands hovering over the activation switch. Together, Chen asked, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Together, Zexlor confirmed, his scales shimmering with anticipation. They pressed the switch in unison. The station hummed to life, energy beams lancing out into space. On the main view screen, they watched as asteroid after asteroid was vaporized or deflected, the deadly field dissipating harmlessly. As the last of the asteroids was neutralized, a cheer went up from both human and Zarkoni team members. They had done it. Against all odds, they had succeeded. Admiral Zixer re-entered the chamber, his expression unreadable. "Congratulations," he said after a moment of tense silence. "You have not only completed the exercise but exceeded all expectations. Your unorthodox methods and unprecedented cooperation have opened new possibilities for both our species." Chen stepped forward, Zexlor at her side. "Thank you, Admiral, but the credit goes to every member of this team. We've learned that our differences aren't weaknesses, they're strengths. The Zarkoni's careful planning and our adaptability, when combined, can overcome any challenge." Zexlor nodded in agreement. "This exercise has taught us all a valuable lesson. The galaxy is indeed full of dangers, but by facing them together, by learning from each other, we become stronger than we ever could be alone." As they prepared to return to their respective worlds, there was a sense of bittersweetness among the team. They had forged bonds that transcended species, challenged preconceptions, and emerged stronger for it. "You know," Kowalski said as they boarded their ships, "I'm going to miss you scaly guys. Who else am I going to teach parkour to?" Tixelor chittered in laughter. "And who will show me how to, as you say, live on the edge? Perhaps we can arrange some exchange programs in the future." As the ships departed Omega Station, both humans and Zarkoni looked out at the vast expanse of space with new eyes. The universe was still a dangerous place, full of challenges and threats. But now, they faced it not with fear, but with confidence and unity. Captain Chen smiled as she took one last look at Nexus 9, the planet that had changed everything. "You know," she mused, "I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." Commander Zexlor, standing beside her, couldn't help but agree. "Indeed, Captain, the stars themselves should beware. Humans and Zarkoni together. There's no challenge we can't overcome." As their ships jumped to light speed, carrying them back to their respective homes, both species knew that this was more than just the end of an exercise. It was the dawn of a new era, one where the combined strengths of humanity and the Zarkoni would reshape the very fabric of galactic civilization. The Deathworlders had not just survived, they had thrived, and in doing so, they had taught the galaxy a valuable lesson. Sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in avoiding danger, but in facing it head-on, together.